despite all this, a persistent theme of Smith scholarship of the last several decades has been that Adam Smith was not an economist, or at least not merely an economist. Rather, he is remembered as an ambitious social scientist of the Enlightenment, whose The Wealth of Nations was but one part of a larger science of man. This science sought to reveal and explain the hidden forces that governed human behavior and human society. In The Theory of Moral Sentiments, published in 1759, 17 years before The Wealth of Nations, Smith explored how and why people learn moral behavior through the process of imaginative projection and sympathetic exchange. Smith also planned to work on the general principles of law and government, as well as a history of literature, philosophy, poetry, and rhetoric, both of which he never completed, and ultimately had destroyed before his death in 1790. However, Smith did save a few essays for posthumous publication. Moreover, with the later discovery of student notebooks in 1895 and 1958, readers have been able to access Smith's lost ideas as they were recorded by his students in his lectures on rhetoric and jurisprudence. Today, readers can appreciate the immense range of Smith's teaching and writings, which were not limited only to economics and moral philosophy, but also included topics such as theories of language, polite learning, the history of science, literary and artistic criticism, poetry, law, and government. Given the breadth and richness of Smith's oeuvre, it is hardly surprising that intellectual historians, political theorists, and social scientists often complain that distorted notions of self-interest, free markets, and the invisible hand have eclipsed Smith's moral philosophy, jurisprudence, and more, and that Smith has become little more than an emblem for think tanks, or a historical soundbite in textbooks. Yet few scholars have asked, let alone answered, the question of how and why these reductive, sloganized, and often politicized versions of Smith came about in the first place. This book is about who Adam Smith was, and who he became in America. It charts how Americans have read, taught, debated, and used Smith's ideas throughout history. It shows how Smith's reputation as the father of economics is an historical invention, and that the foundational status of the Wealth of Nations is a belated construction. More importantly, though, this book tries to make sense of the political work that engaging with Smith has done throughout history, and what the implications for our political and economic thinking are. Repeated contestation over Smith's original intentions, his method, and the contemporary import of his ideas has provided opportunities for past and present readers to define the relationship between ethics and economics, between politics and the economy, between past thought and present action. Works on Adam Smith often begin with Smith's biography, and this book is no exception. This is not simply to present Smith's life as a sequence of events and ideas, but rather to demonstrate how Smith's biography conditions the reception of his ideas and the invention of his legacy. Despite the volume of work Smith left behind, we know surprisingly little of his life, a fact that is irksome and puzzling to many of Smith's biographers and interpreters. The paucity of biographical detail has meant that what is reconstructed of Smith's life usually results from trying to reconstruct Smith's mind. Add to that Smith's most infamous act of deliberate destruction, the burning of his unpublished manuscripts, and one has the perfect recipe for an historical and intellectual